After my video, Your Elegance is a Witness, I noticed many people still define elegance by clothing alone. To limit elegance to wardrobe is to undermine what took place in the Garden of Eden and the essence of the ministry of Christ. Hey family, you are welcome back to my channel. In my last video, God of the mountains and the mounts, Your Elegance is a Witness. Some responses showed me something important. Many people still think holiness is about clothing alone. To reduce elegance to dressing alone is to misunderstand the Garden of Eden and the ministry of Christ. Whenever I speak about elegance, I am speaking beyond outward clothing because when man fell in the Garden of Eden, what man lost went far deeper than outward covering. But through elegance in the sight of God, the gains in the spirit flows through character and eventually touches appearance. Because of this, I have decided to make a series on what I call the lost elegance in order to solidify our walk with God. Because I realize that until there is an enlightenment on this issue, many people will be stuck in the valley of spiritual complacency. Therefore, in today's episode, I will be showing us 7 things man lost in the Garden of Eden and how they connect to elegance. If you are new here, I am Abigail Israel-Omolayo, your faith and elegance mentor. Without further ado, let us dive into today's video. 7 things man lost in the garden. Number 1, intimacy with God. Adam was still in the Garden of Eden, even after the fall, when God called out to him, Adam, where are you? God asked this question not because God lacked location, but because Adam was not found where he was supposed to be. There was a position he held in God. Let me paint this picture for us. When a woman is pregnant, she shares the same life with the baby in her womb. Both of them are connected through the umbilical cord. But as soon as the baby is out, the umbilical cord that connects the baby with the mother is cut so that both the mother and the baby can have different life. And so what connected, the umbilical cord that connected Adam with God was cut. He lost alignment. He lost his position. So he could not be found in his position. So therefore God called him, where are you? Elegance begins with divine alignment. Number 2, godly perspective was lost. Before the fall, man saw through God's perspective. But immediately after the fall, man became self-conscious. They became self-aware. Genesis chapter 3, verse 7 tells us, and the eyes of them were both opened, and they knew that they were naked. The Hebrew word for new is yada, and it's not talking about mere sin. It's talking about knowing experientially, knowing intimately. The word yada or intimate is the same word used when a man and a woman becomes intimate. So you know the gravity of what happened there. Adam knew intimately. He knew by experience that he had lost something. He became aware of himself that he's naked and he became embarrassed. He became ashamed. And this contrasted with what happened in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, that says the man and the wife were both naked and they were not ashamed or embarrassed. So what happened there? Sin shifted man from God consciousness to self-awareness. And that is why today a man or a woman can just wake up and look at herself or himself and feel ashamed and feel insecure about himself or about herself instead of looking from God's perspective. Elegance sees true truth, not insecurity. Number three, physical fellowship became distant. Once in the Garden of Eden, God walked freely with man. But after the fall, communion became separation. Man stopped communicating with God. There was a gap between man and God, and not because God desired or designed it that way, but because sin has separated man from God. There was a gap in intimacy, in fellowship between man and God. Genesis chapter 4, verse 26 tells us something very important. It says, to Seth, a man was born, whom he named Enosh, that is mortal man or mankind. At that same time, men began to call on the name of the Lord in worship, through prayer, praise, and thanksgiving. Between the time God sent out Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden and when Enosh was born, there was a gap of 235 years. So it means that for 235 years, God and man were not in talking terms. Prayer became pursuit instead of natural flow. Elegance carries nearness to God. Number four, purity was replaced with sensuality. You see, in the realm of the spirit, there's no vacuum. When something is taken away from here, another thing must replace it. So, before the fall, man carried righteous instincts. But after the fall, sensuality took over. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5 tells us that the thoughts of man became evil continually to the extent that God was grieved. Why? Because what governed man has changed. Elegance protects purity. Glamour feeds sensuality. Number five, identity became fractured. Man moved from father-son relationship to creation consciousness. And this is what Christ came to restore. There is this axiom in Yoruba. When a man is charging his son or his children to behave well in the society, especially when that man has a name to protect, he tells his son, he tells his children, know whose child you are. Knowing whose you are produces two things. One, confidence. Two, it curtails your character. Man lost father-son relationship. And this is what Christ came to restore. John 1:12 tells us, as many as received him, to them he gave power to become sons of God. Power there in Greek means exousia. It talks about legal rights. It talks about authority. So as many as receive Christ, legal rights has been given to that individual to become a son, to restore that consciousness that man lost in the Garden of Eden. Elegance flow from knowing whose you are. Number 6, humility gave way to pride. After Cain killed Abel, God called out to him, Cain, where is your brother Abel? Instead of Cain to respond with humility, to confess his sin, he answered God roughly. He answered God with arrogance. Genesis chapter 4 verse 9 tells us that then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? Then he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? Speech reveals heart posture. And God weighs how something is said, not just what is said. There is a way you say sorry, and it reflects remorse. And there's a way you say sorry, and it depicts sarcasm or arrogance. Elegance speaks with humility. By the way, if you are gaining value for your time, kindly subscribe to this channel. Give it a thumbs up, then share with friends and family. Number 7, covering was replaced with substitutes. The first response of man to sin was fig leaves. And humanity has been sowing substitutes ever since. Today, we have busyness for emptiness, achievements to cover insecurity, religion to cover up for distance from God, and distraction to cover for the ache for something more. But only God gives true covering. Elegance is not hiding shame, it is wearing restoration. And so each time I'm speaking about elegance, I am not speaking merely of fashion, but I am speaking of the restoration of what Eden lost and Christ came to recover. True elegance is heaven expressed through a yielded life. True elegance is the visible order of a life restored by God. It begins in the spirit, shapes character, and can be expressed outwardly. Now let me ask you this question. Of all these losses, which of them do you think is affecting our society the most today? Let me know your response in the comments. And I want to say that you stay with me for episode 2. Thank you very much for watching. Shalom.